Thank you very much, Jackie and Mindy, for having me once again. I feel like I've appeared at so many of your events, I should join your company. I'm a great singer. Right, Pammy? Yes. Want to hear a number? Thank you, babe. At the previous event, I read the first part of a prologue to a coming-of-age novel called The Domino Effect. The story is about a charismatic, sounds like a disease, charismatic kid from Queens poisoned by the past. The current narrative of the novel takes place at a boarding school in the mid-90s over the course of Domino's final year of high school. The stakes are very high for him, considering his recent history, the details of which are provided in a three-part prologue, each depicting the events of a previous year of high school. The objective here, in a literary sense, is to familiarize the reader with Domino's experiences and leave them literally and figuratively with him when he arrives for senior year, when the prologue ends and the novel begins. As mentioned last time I read, I have a challenge reading this story because the narrator is a 17-year-old kid from Queens, and the only thing he and I have in common is that our last names end with vowels. So I ask for your understanding as I try to channel my inner outer borough kid. We all have one in us somewhere, I'm sure. A kid who had a charmed childhood in an Italian neighborhood, a neighborhood where his mother had grown up and imported a world-wise husband and father to their only child. The father taught his son to be socially benevolent, to look out for other people whenever he could, to be a stand-up kid, as they might say. And this ethos worked well for Domino growing up. The summer before high school started, he had a lot going for him. A cool nickname, friends that followed him, thank you, friends that followed him, and a girlfriend with a great set of lungs, as he says. He was on the cusp of an amazing adolescence, but the neighborhood changed that summer. It changed when Latin immigration kicked in and cultural tensions arose from it. Domino, who was a bit of a prankster, pulled off a stupid stunt with regard to all this, and he told his father about it, and it cost him the rest of his summer. So when the summer was over, he went back to his old ways and started school, and it cost him a whole lot more. This is the very end of part one, the first year of his high school, which will lead right into the second and third years of high school, which I will read tonight. When I'm finished with that third part, that's when the novel really begins. I did my own thing until I was walking home one day, towards the end of the year, and these kids came up from behind me on bikes, but I didn't turn around. A few of them rolled past, and I started to relax, thinking they were gone, when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, something caved in the back of my head. There were bright lights for a second until things went black. I thought it must have been the bus or something, but I found out later it was somebody swinging a tire iron. I remember lying on the filthy sidewalk, blood running across my face and into my mouth. It tasted like pennies, dirty pennies, and that, for the most part, ended my first year of high school. Second year. The run-in with the tire iron got me a week in the hospital and a shaved head. The wound was more like a gash than a cut, so they had to clear all my hair away to help keep things clean as it healed. Good look, especially for a kid, though I didn't feel all that young anymore. I felt numb more than anything and had this feeling that something important had been taken from me, but I didn't know what. From home, I took all my tests and finished the school year. My mother finished law school around the same time, and Pop, the teacher, was done for the summer too. So we got a bungalow at the end of Long Island in a village called Montauk, where the locals fished for sharks and rode the waves. It was a long, hot summer of nothing. No fun with friends, no crazy excitement pumping through my veins. I felt the opposite of invincible, whatever that was. My folks kept trying to get me to talk about what happened and to understand that I hadn't done anything wrong. They wanted to know how I felt, but I couldn't really tell them that I didn't feel like a comic book hero anymore. Besides, I didn't really know. When I thought about it, no words came. So we spent our days at the beach, where Pop floated past the surf, and I sat on the sand, unable to swim and afraid of sharks I couldn't see. I felt afraid of other things too, like the packs of kids kicking around town. They looked at me funny, in my sneakers and jeans, and a hat I had to wear to cover my scar. My mother took the train into the city most days to interview for law jobs. She came back soon enough with a position that started in the fall. But she kept taking that train out of Montauk, and she came back another day with news of a new house in Queens. She'd given up on the neighborhood where she'd lived since she was 8 years old. At first, she wanted to fight. I'd hear her argue with my father at night, dropping names of the guys from around that she knew, guys that she'd grown up with who were nice to us, but maybe not so nice in general. She said they could find out easily who did this to me, and then they would make things right. But Pop wasn't having that. He was no pacifist, and he taught me all my life to defend myself. We had a heavy bag in the basement, and he showed me how to punch and move, protect myself, which I did, best I could, for as long as I could. Pop just wasn't into the idea of payback, of sending someone else's kid to the hospital. He wanted all this to end. So when summer was over, we went back to Queens, but to a new neighborhood and a new house. It was a big place, too. Looked like a castle, Tudor or something. 3 floors, standalone, with a driveway and a 1-car garage and a shaded patio out back. We were separated from the neighbors by bushes instead of alleys. The neighborhood reminded me of towns I'd seen outside the city, with tall trees and green grass. People passed, but didn't stop to talk. I took a room on the very top floor, with slanted walls, a little stained glass window, and a spot to sit under the widow's peak. I'd be in the window most of the day, slouched with my feet on the opposite wall, playing my Springsteen CDs and reading comic books in the colored light. My parents would come up once in a while to check on me, make sure I was okay. I wasn't, but they didn't know how bad it was. They kept saying things would be normal for me once again after school started. I went to a Catholic school, pretty close to home. I hated the place right away. Way too strict, and the only girls around were nuns. And those nuns could give those big guys from the old neighborhood a pretty good fight. So I kept to myself. And at some point, in the middle of the first semester, I stopped speaking altogether, which drove the nuns crazy. They'd ask me questions in class, and I'd just sit there, silent. So after school, they'd put me on the roof to clean out garbage cans as punishment for not saying anything. Nuns. One day, after throwing everything I could get my hands on from the roof into the teacher's parking lot, I ran home, straight to the garage. Pop had band practice that day, and Ma worked late every day. We moved the heavy bag there to the 1-car garage, and I punched it with my bare hands, moving the weight around pretty good. Through heavy breathing, I could hear the tear of my knuckles across the canvas. Pale spots began to show up on the bag, and I decided to cover the whole thing with my blood. After the canvas bag was good and polka dotted, I sat on a crate and ripped off the stupid sweater and shirt they made us wear to school. Sweat dripped off my chin. My knuckles throbbed and burned red like they'd been dragged over sandpaper. It felt kind of good, but not good enough. I walked up to the garage door and punched out a window pane. The sound of the shattered glass and the slashing of my hands got me what I wanted. I punched out all the rest of them too, sending glass everywhere. Afterward, it looked like my fist had been rammed in a blender. My hand gushed and I watched it bleed, letting the blood drip to the floor. For some reason, I wanted to feel and see myself bleed again. I licked a wound and tasted the dirty pennies. A puddle of blood formed on the floor between my feet. Then I wrapped my hand in the school sweater and went inside. With a pack of my mother's smokes, I went to the attic, sat in the colored window, and sucked cigarette after cigarette until my tongue blistered. Later, I heard the sound of someone coming upstairs. Pop showed up in the doorway and wiped away the air. "Have you been smoking in here, young man?" he asked in this hokey voice. Then he saw my hand, and he dragged me to the hospital.